we have to then say, what are we doing wrong? Because since 1968 with Rachel Carson and A Silent Spring, and in the 70s, where everybody was predicting the global warming and the pollution and all this and the oceans dying, we described the problem great. No one has come up with a viable solution. These technologies you're going to hear about tonight are the solution. Next. And I put this up here because I firmly believe there can be no peace on this planet without justice. And there can be no justice when half the population of the world is required to live in abject poverty. It's a direct result of the world's energy system. What do I mean by that? The billions of people who don't even have plumbing and don't even have electricity or gas, if they wanted to live like you and I do, guess what? The price of gasoline would be $100 a gallon, because it would create such a demand beyond what the supply could ever be to refine and provide. And so we live, and Americans in Western rich countries and Japan don't think of this. Literally half the world's population is in terrible poverty. How do you change that with an energy paradigm that is, I hate to say it, I call them the petro-fascists, have deliberately kept us in this state, as the population now is about to hit 8 billion in about a month or two. Next. And we're going to play this just so you get a sense, and you all know this, but just to recap what's happening. And then we have this whole morass of how we're living, on wires that we haven't needed. And so the entire system is set up to benefit a relatively small number of global oligarchs and financial interests that we absolutely have to say enough. They've had 150 years to do this. So as you look at all of this, all the deforestation, all the ocean damage, the coral reefs dying, it's all avoidable. The good news is it can be fixed very quickly. And so these are the issues. Like here you have a coal mine. Why are we digging stuff up out of the ground when we haven't needed to burn coal since about the 1920, 1930 time period? Here's your solar panels. I had to replace my solar panels with more, and they all end up in a landfill and they're toxic. We're working in a paradigm, whether it be fossil fuels or what is being proposed as new energy, that isn't going to work. Endless, you see the book years ago, Armageddon, and you have lithium fields. You can't believe happening and keep happening and keep happening, and have been avoidable. Look at this in the oceans. Most of you know that there are these nanoparticulate plastics that are in the entire food chain. They cause cancer, they disrupt hormones, they damage your brain. And why? Well, if we had quote-unquote free energy systems from what we're going to describe, this zero-point energy field, you would never have to have anything wasted, but you have 100% recycling because the cost of the energy would be zero. The rate limiting factor in most of this is the cost of energy. You get to the point of diminishing return when you're trying to recycle. And then we have all these famines happening around the world because of the absolute social injustice of a system that is driven by greed and limited, scarce resources, when, as Tesla pointed out, there's an infinite amount of energy to be tapped in what has now been quantified as the zero-point energy field. Visualize this as you see these images of both new energy solutions, quote-unquote, and the old guard. We have the nuclear problems, deep horizon disasters, and how many of these have to happen before we do something effective? Now, I will give a pass to everyone who doesn't know about the fact that there are technologies that would solve this problem. But once you do know, you cannot turn your back on this. So now I'm putting a very heavy burden on all of you. Everyone at home, the 10,000 or so people by webinar, and all of you guys, that we have a responsibility, once we know what this information is, to do everything. I left my medical career to do this and get this fixed for our children and our grandchildren. Next month, my 12th grandchild will be born. Hard to believe, but what a journey, huh? So I think that when we look at this, and we can go to the next series, look at this. How long ago was it recognized that this was a disaster? Senior scientist Exxon, this is, excuse me, 45 years ago. There's a scientific agreement that global climate through carbon dioxide is, this problem. And so people think that, we're doing study after study after study. Well, 45 years on, after it was a known problem, and actually it was known before then, this is insanity. This is a civilization gone mad. Next. So one of the problems is that many scientists, such as myself, have discovered that Earth can't stand hundreds of years more. It can't stand another 20. I'll tell you right now. You don't have 20 years. The other issue is that that's assuming that the only people on Earth that need to have energy and air conditioning and cars and modern life are the 4% of people who are living in America of the world's population of 8 billion. 4% of 8 billion is 320 million. It's about what we have. So that's not a very compassionate view either. Next. And then look at this. We'll just roll through these one after the mammal diversity, is going down, completely off the cliff. But we're losing our biogenome, we call it. Next. And we have this mass extinction event. That this is the 6th great extinction that's happening on the planet, and it's 100% man-made, all of it. So this is a huge problem, and we have to all awaken, because what's happened, I think we're like a frog being boiled slowly in a pot and turning up the heat, and suddenly we're going to wake up and find out, it's too late. We've gone over the boiling point. 150 species every day go extinct. Now these aren't all animals; they're all kinds of species. Next. And then we have these huge problems that we mentioned earlier. The ice caps melting, and all that will entail, that will then rise sea levels. And we're already seeing that all over the world. There are some islands that are having to be evacuated. Your ocean's going to rise too. But here's a case where the Canadian government ordered the scientists not to disclose the extent of it. So what you get in the media is a very sanitized version of this problem, which many people believe we may have already gone over the edge of the red line, how far we can go without a safe return to a sustainable civilization. Next. And this is one of my favorite points that came out. And they had an article in The Economist, 3 billion people. Put this just for a moment. 3 billion people, almost half the world's population, has 3 billion people that don't even have, even if they had access to fossil fuels, they don't have access. This is how they're living. Next. And this is even happening in Europe. I mean, Germany may freeze this winter because of the gas pipelines being cut off, when we haven't needed gas pipelines for 100 years. Keep that in mind. And here you have over 1 billion people who don't have access to potable water. Next. And then we have this. Those of us in the Western world are feeling the pinch of what's happening with these prices. And I don't think we've seen anything yet. And if you look at what's going on in Europe in the next image, we're talking 800% increase in energy prices. It's become a huge crisis around the world. There are riots happening. Now, it's really sad because here we are dependent on transmission lines, fossil fuels, nuclear power plants. We'll get to this in a minute. When the solutions are there and they're being classified and seized by the patent office, etc., which we will prove in a moment. Next. And of course, this is another problem. Everyone thinks, if we plug in enough cars, which are being fueled off of coal-fired and gas-fired power grid, right? 88% of it. You plug in your Tesla or my new electric Jeep, which is a fun toy. We'll get to this and I'll show you a picture. But it's coming. Well, boys and their toys. This thing. But it's not a solution at all. Except mine runs on a solar panel when it works. I'll show you this. I'll show you this in a minute. Here's big in caps, when it works. Next. So then we have this,